It's been a while once again, but I say it's been a while, and it's been about a week since last time I recorded this game, in particular, because I like leaving the bets up for a while to accumulate votes. It's a bit of fun, and I hope you appreciate it too. I don't know, it's going to be a while before you see any of them pay off, I think, based on how it seems like one card in a stack fits one video pretty perfectly, but a lot of these bets seem to be looking ahead like 2 or 3 card stacks. And if I go cycling around one stack at a time, it might take a while to come back for some of these to actually pay off. But I don't know, maybe once we're through everyone's first card stack, I'll sort of ask you who we want to revisit next, and take the direction from there. We'll see. For now, though, let us review, shall we? Last episode, when we were meeting Thane. Or is it Thane? It's certainly not Thane, in the extent that we have come to expect. So, the bit we're betting on, will Thane be discovered in 3 scenes? Interestingly, we're betting on Thane maintaining the illusion with the duots. An interesting bet. I will put chips on that. I don't know if I necessarily agree with this choice, but I will put chips on that. The second poll was the personal question that I found intriguing, that I found myself wondering about. I'm dragging random shit in OBS. What is going on? Is Thane actually Mercury, the protagonist from the previous card stack? Yes, that seems to be the preeminent conclusion. Oh, I just realized I did the math on the wrong numbers there. Still works out to about 50%. We're going to be betting. But yeah, it seems the preeminent conclusion, which really, as I said last time, gives us a bit more intrigue about both card stacks, really. On that note, will Thane be discovered in 3 scenes? Survey says no. Ah, you have faith. Good. We need more faith in the world. And I need to win more chips. Okay then, bet made. Now how many chips are you putting up for this? We have 7 chips. Ah. We are running low on chips. Yeah, I'm gonna put 3 chips on it. Alrighty then, we have a bet. So now let us enjoy the trials and tribulations of our newest, bestest Thane with all our hearts. We have 4 chips left. 1 new stack to see. Let's see this stack, shall we? The unseen. It is gone. There's nothing like sitting on the toilet with nothing but a stomach ache. It was almost nostalgic. It certainly brought back memories. Not good memories, mind you, but those are hard to come by anyways. The point is, it's a familiar feeling. Which is weird because I definitely have never been in a situation like this. I was like getting nervous. For some of the shit I've seen, this was nothing. Was it just because of the environment? Fancy parties never did sit right with me. Hell, if we're speaking of bad memories. But no, that's almost certainly not it. So then, why? I wasn't good at this self-diagnosis thing. I spent so much time in my own head, but I could hardly understand it. My moods often felt arbitrary. And maybe that's what this was. An arbitrary mood. Not a helpful one, but since when had moods been helpful? Sometimes you'd walk into a room and forget why you came. Your body, your mind, it could just be cruel. So what to do? I focused back on my counting. 319. 318, 317, 316, hide and seek, nightmare mode, 315. What was so calming about counting? Was it the fact that it was rhythmic? Was it the fact that it was simple? Whatever it was, it did bring me back down to earth. I had been waiting in the restroom for long enough. The gala was in full swing outside. It was almost time to play my part. Oh. Okay. Get it together, body. Standing up. Any second now. Any second. Body seemed to resist the impulse to stand up for as long as it possibly could. However, after enough urging, I got to my feet. I left the stall. I began to exit the restroom. It was at this point that the door swung open. Ah, shit. Secretary guy. Hey, what are you doing here? Hi, Devin. This is gonna play back into the murder at the, Gala Lodge from the very first stack. I struggled to meet Secretary Gani's gaze. Even if I didn't know where this conversation was going, I could recognize that tone. Nothing good came from that tone. My position was best to just keep my head down and stay there. Stay silent. Are you the same guy who came down here like 10 minutes ago? Don't think I didn't see that. Well? Yes, sir, that's me. Gani chuckled to himself, as if surprised by my gall. Then his face tightened. Wow. I mean, just wow. Guess you might have to take a big shit. Unless you got like serious medical issues or something. There's no way in hell you should be here this long. Seems to me you're just bailing on your duties. That's not what... Hey, yo, did I finish talking? No, sir. I'm glad I was wearing a mask. You wouldn't be able to see my face turning completely red. Man, where do you punks get off? What, do you think that because I'm doing things, I don't have my eyes open? Do you think you can just get away with it because I'm dumb or something? And not at all. You know, I know how I look. But you don't get to be the right hand of one of the most influential people in Panthea by being an idiot. Of course, sir. Whatever, I shouldn't be wasting more of your time. Just get back to work, okay? I will. Once again, the secretary shook his head bewilderingly. Don't play a player, man. I've slacked off long enough to spot a slacker. Without another word, he walked past me into one of the stalls. I awkwardly just resumed washing my hands. Keeping my count while holding my own in that conversation was tricky. I don't know why I got flustered by him so easily. It's not like he really mattered. As I reached for the soap, I thought I heard the sound of a lighter. This Juan was really going to light a joint here, of all places? I knew he was always high, but this was just ridiculous. Well, I encouraged it. The more blazed he is, the more likely that he wouldn't remember this interaction. And that would be a win in my book. After drying off my hands, I put back on my gloves. Because those were so vital to doing my job right. This mask itched. Much as I hated to say it, Governor Aisha was a little eccentric for making the staff all wear this getup. I wasn't exactly sure how I felt about it. It gave me a natural reason to hide my face, so I saw that as a plus. Finally, I made my way out the restroom and into the hallway. On the other side of the hallway was the door to the boiler room. I wasn't an architect, but this struck me as a bit of an odd layout. But what did I know? As I walked down the hallway into the Gala, I got back into the groove. I'm a waiter. Right now I just have to do my job. And wait. 257. 256. 255. As I entered the Gala's main room, once again I took a second to admire the opulence of it all. Opulence. I has it. Is not. That's a random commercial reference. It's not like I had never been in a fancy place before or anything, but it had been a while. This band was in full swing. Music playing wasn't exactly to my tastes, but I could certainly appreciate its quality. The guests were all dressed to the nines. All oozed style and class. If you sold the group's wardrobe, you could probably house and feed a family for a year at minimum. Years? I was bad with calculating money. Point was, it was a lot. The food and drinks all sported impressive price tags. Their taste probably matched. Or did they? A question crossed my mind. Was this any better than any other party? Did the spacious area really add anything? Was music more worthwhile than some typical EDM? These expensive outfits looked less comfortable than casual clothes. Some people say that when you're dancing, you're really happy. It didn't take a mathematician to calculate that less people were dancing at this party than at some rave. So was it worth it? Probably. I was pretty dumb, especially about things like this. On the other hand, rich people tended to be pretty intelligent. They knew more than me. They could do whatever they wanted, and they chose to do things like this. They had for centuries. So even though from my perspective the whole thing felt a bit excessive, I was sure I was just missing something. Still, some part of me couldn't help but wonder. Pretty much every person of decent wealth in Panthea stood in this room. This party wasn't particularly cramped. Well, there was probably a reason for it. This sort of thinking was beyond me. I was better for much more simple things. Things like serving drinks. I grabbed a tray and got to work. As I made my way through the crowd, I couldn't help but eavesdrop on a particularly loud conversation between two well-dressed ladies. So, how are you enjoying the Gala so far? Oh, it's fine. I can't help but feel like Aisha's done better in the past. But that goes without saying. Considering everything else about her, it makes sense her parties would also be in decline. Oh no. Ha! And too true. But perhaps that's not her fault. It's been incredibly dull so far. Usually there's some drama. Where's the drama? Wait for some of these men to get more drinks in, then we'll see this party's real worth. Cheers to that. They clink to their drinks. Honestly, does Aisha really need to hold these fundraisers? Rumor has it she's already been getting plenty of funding. Besides, it's been over a decade since anyone ever really gave her a run for her money. Oh, you haven't heard? There's a new candidate for this election. Oh, do tell. Yes, it's a real folksy type. A man of the people. Again. Whatever whips up the masses. Anyway, I've already amassed a reasonable amount of support so far. Is he particularly impressive? Not by my measure, but then again, I suppose he's not really trying to rally me. Not really, he's run more of an offensive campaign thus far. He's been pointing out Aja's inadequacies. How those filthy duats have still been unchallenged. How it's never been worse for small business owners. That the only policies Aja ever seems to bother passing makes Panthea more isolationist and self-sufficient. Really going for the jugular, eh? Apparently. And power to him, someone needs to say it. I've just been getting so far too self-assured for my liking. Indeed. Honestly, I don't think she's even a very good politician at all. As a person, so pretentious. Seriously, I'm thinking my lucky star she hasn't come over to us yet to try and smooze. That said, you're still going to donate a token amount to her, right? Naturally. Pay your dues and such. Okay, well, if you put it like that. If there's some legitimacy to that, then okay. If not, then just you're being lazy and sitting on your laurels instead of actually trying to do something to change. It's not worth the hassle doing otherwise. What we put up with. Here, here. Another cheers, but in but so many seconds. Listening in on this whole exchange, all I could do was bite my tongue. Forget it. Let's walk away. Honestly, I didn't have time to waste with such petty eavesdropping. Oh, over there. Art was talking with Odin. It was in a hushed tone, but still loud enough for me to easily overhear the conversation. I'm just saying, this might be an ideal time for you to, you know, retire. I'm not trying to be forceful. Oh, just say it, you pansy. Don't recall raising a weak ass. I do recall you raising a workaholic. Well aware of your philosophy regarding a man's worth, Odin. Which is why I know that I might be coming across as insensitive. You're not coming across as insensitive, you dolt. You're coming across as calculating. Just want me completely out of the picture. And you know me, I respect calculating. God knows your siblings could have used more of that gene. But I've no intention on completely bowing out of the company. Why would I? Well, if you listened, I know your damn sales pitch will be all the typical talking points. Already relaxing most of the time. Pretty much retired already, only with the bonus of poking my nose into affairs when I want to. So you know, I don't think there's any sense in me giving up my 25% share of the company. Art sighed heavily. He was well aware of how obstinate Odin could get. I'd be much more understanding if I could get a better sense of where some of your ideas have been coming from. They just don't make sense to me. And that's the problem, isn't it? As good as you are at the details, you've always been completely abysmal at the bigger picture. So then help me see. Is that how this family has ever handled things? You want to know what motivates me? I've given you all the clues. You want to seek the Tremurti and be my guest, eh? Just like everything else. I'm not going to hand that out to you. Especially not that. So you're saying that you do have some sort of agenda? You tell me. There's definitely something more to that story. The Tremurti. However, this was neither the time nor the place to look into that. To be frank, it was probably best to just not look into today's business at all. On the other side of the table, Polly was drinking by himself. Of course. The Tremurti being the trio of supreme deities in Hinduism, right? But Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Creator, preserver, destroyer. It's painfully apparent that he'd been drinking for a while. Typical. I could work with that. A few tables away sat Cyrene. She also seemed to be a bit tipsy, but clearly in higher spirits. She was in a particularly lively conversation with her boyfriend? I was going to guess boyfriend. Most notably, she had an oversized purse hung on the back of her chair. I could see her phone in it from here. This wasn't luck, though. A specific opportunity presenting itself. Sure, that's lucky. I was on the lookout for opportunities. The odds that something like this came up was actually pretty high. Made my way by her table. A tray of wine glasses occupied one of my hands. She left one free to swipe the phone in a clean, practiced motion while I passed by. In the corner of my eye, I noticed it was still unlocked, left on some sort of social media. Cyrene was the type of sociopath to not lock her phone the moment she was done with it. Excellent. And this was lucky. I continued to wander for a little bit, putting on airs. For this to work, the timing had to be pretty precise. When I got an opportunity, I stopped, placed the tray down on a nearby table, and stood by the wall. It was a perfect unassuming moment for a waiter to be checking his phone. Only it wasn't his phone. Or, my phone. It was Cyrene's. Much as I'd love to snoop, professional. I'm a professional. I opened a messaging app. Quickly I found Polly's contact. Their last texts were far more recent than I would have expected. To double check, I looked over. Sure enough, both Cyrene and Polly's tables were on this side of the room, so this would work. Judging by Polly's state of sobriety, or complete lack thereof, it wouldn't take a lot. Something short, sweet, and inciting. With a slight smirk, I typed up something quick. Your brother has a bigger dick than you. That'd do it. All right. 68. 67. It was time. I picked back up the wine tray with one of my arms. I had the phone in my other hand. My thumb hovered right over the send button. But not yet. Patience. Take things step by step. Move past table after table. There was Cyrene's. I pressed the send button, and a second later dropped the phone back into her purse. I didn't even bother looking back. If she noticed this little sleight of hand, I was already fucked. But she didn't. Because I was a professional. 59. 58. Yeah, like I thought. She hadn't noticed shit. But someone had. The fuck's this about? There you go, Polly. Make an ass of yourself. Again, I didn't need to turn around to know what was happening. Completely inebriated jackass he was, Polly was not going to take that last message lying down. Cyrene and Polly's on, and mostly off-again relationship was incredibly volatile. This wouldn't be the first screaming match the two would get in. This would just be the most public. And the most useful. Now came the main event. On the other side of the room I saw him. If you had seen him, you knew what to look for. A very even keel, I made my way over to him. No, not directly over to him. Planned my moves a few steps ahead. Moved, circling towards him. He would be on my arc, but not my final destination. That's how it would appear to the common observer, at any rate. This all sounds awfully technical, and highbrow for just walking to a person. But I had to put a lot of thought into these minor things. It was the minor things that made or broke these operations. As I began approaching, I held the tray with the wine glass closer to my body. I couldn't make this a major incident. It needed to be nothing more than a minor hiccup. Closer, closer. Right next to him, I carefully tripped over Mr. Athens' foot. The deft hand I directed the spilling glass right at the side of his coat. The whole thing panned out perfectly. Most importantly, Polly's freakout was drawing everyone's attention. The following interaction would be between Mr. Athen and myself. Excellent. As soon as the old man realized what had happened, his face turned to a scowl. I say, this is the type of service I should expect. I'm so sorry, sir. Please let me help you out. I would think so. Honestly, I was surprised at how tame his response was. I thought he'd be an even larger dick. Still, I need to play the panicked, nervous waiter. I placed the tray on a nearby empty table. I took out a rag and began drying off the spill on Mr. Athen. Some people would probably bristle at the gesture. They'd think it too much. But not Mr. Athen. To him, it made sense that someone else would fix their mess. That someone else would clean him up. Was it a little much to bank on his arrogance? Maybe. But I had a backup. This was just the best case outcome. Because as I was drying him off, it was the perfect opportunity to plant it. The suit Mr. Athen was wearing had a big, obvious front pocket. It was practically begging me to slip something there. And sure enough, I slipped my prepared rag into that pocket. He'd probably notice it before too long. The plan was that he wouldn't have too long to notice it. The rag was just the opening volley. The real key of this act was the ice cube. Mr. Athen wouldn't be distracted for long. The old coot was well past his prime. He wasn't the attentive type. A real magician would have an absolute field day with him. And so this next move took very little effort. I palmed the ice cube that had been slowly melting in my pocket. Honestly, I'm surprised it was still mostly intact. Preparing it in the bathroom, I was worried that it would melt very quickly. I guess ice keeps its form a lot longer than I expected. Very subtly, I placed it in the glass of wine Mr. Athen was drinking from. When I knocked into him, he had very reasonably placed it on the table. Placed it in a prime position for me to drop the poisoned ice cube. I didn't even look at the glass, I just maintained eye contact. Made sure Mr. Athen didn't notice. He didn't. Just like that, this old man's fate was sealed. Sometimes when I did my job, I'd feel the need to apologize. Not to the person themselves, but just to somebody. Looking at this man's face, however, I didn't waver for a moment. He brought this on himself. He dreamed bigger than he should have. Fought nastier than he should have. The man had a very simple, very basic job. Even I couldn't fuck it up. But for whatever reason, Athen just couldn't do the bare minimum. He strove for more when he had it all. That's something the universe always tends to punish. 33, 32, 31. Again, so sigh. I bowed and began to put some distance between the two of us. However, before I got too far, I took one last item out of my pocket, a crumpled up page of the Bible. I had highlighted a specific verse from the Book of Psalms. When I highlighted, it didn't really matter, it just felt like something fittingly ominous. The page itself, however, carried quite a lot of meaning. When I first read Cock Robin, I was sort of stunned. I didn't particularly like the poem. Much the opposite, it sounded like complete nonsense. I read it 4 times and still didn't understand it. But I didn't understand a lot of poems. They tended to be too abstract, and they'd often go above my head. So I tried looking up the meaning online, hoping someone on the internet would know what the hell the poem was talking about. Turns out the internet was just as torn as I was. Some guy said that it was trying to talk about the fall of some British dude called Robert Walpole. Robin. Someone else said it was a parody of the death of King William II. He got killed by an arrow? I guess? He was telling the story of the murderer of the Norse god Balder. Or perhaps the death of the Celtic god Lu. Theory after theory, each as threadbare as the last. Came away from the poem thinking that it was really completely meaningless. And I was only recommended it because it was a clear, methodical list of distinctive things. Well, fair enough. The poem might not have meaning now. That just meant I'd be the one to give it meaning. The note was right by the base of the table. That was close enough. Now I could make my escape. I took 3 steps away from Mr. Anthem. Then a thought crossed my head. I turned back to the old man. Before I knew what I was doing, I spoke. Enjoy the party. After all, you never know if it'll be your last party, that is. The last party you attend, to be specific. Without a further moment of clarification, I immediately turned away before I could see the old man's reaction. Incredibly embarrassed. Had a bit more pizzazz. My ass. How the hell was this supposed to make things any better? Whatever. Job complete. 21, 20, 19. Need to get out of here. I made my way to the exit. There's nobody in my way. Look casual. By the entrance, one of the waiters that was logging people in the guest list was standing casually. That's expected. That's good, honestly. Might pose a tiny bit of an issue. No, that's only if I let it. I just decided to walk by him. Just gave him a solid nod. It was a matter of confidence. I just walked out like I was meant to. Hey man, where you going? Shit. Just, smoke break. Alright, cool. Oh, thank God, I thought that was going to be a bigger issue. I opened the door, walked through. Like that, I had fled the premises. I was out of the building now, so counting was irrelevant. Still, it was a good practice to see how accurate I was. I'd given myself 10 seconds of wiggle room. That's about how close I could cut it before risking that the target would collapse before the lights went out. And that was the absolute worst case scenario. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. I heard some shouting. That must have been it then. People were panicking because the lights went out unexpectedly. That made sense. That was the sort of emotional reaction I could track. Well, hold on. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Maybe that old coot collapsed early. Maybe that's what the shouting was in reference to. Double check, I decided to look under the door. Sure enough, I didn't see any light coming out of it. Great. Things had gone really well. But I couldn't just zone out now. I need to remember I was still a few feet away from a dead body. I'd be powerless, useless if I was in jail. Couldn't let that happen. So now, time to clean up loose ends. Wait, no. I made it sound like I was just beginning to clean up loose ends. That's what this whole thing was about. It was best to keep moving now, while adrenaline was working in my favor. Obviously, my first instinct was to try and put as much distance between this building and myself as possible. Part of being a professional was just to ignore those first instincts. I could flee before removing my little friend in the boiler room. Theoretically, there was nothing about it that could link back to me. Still, its presence would give a lot of the game away. It was worth the risk to go remove it. I sprinted around the west side of the building, trying to circle the venue. It was really dark out. Even the light on the side of the building was gouged. Probably my fault. Oh well. I had done my homework. I could circle this building blindfolded. Before long, I was on the other side when I spotted a small open window. Dangling out of it was a nice small rope. I grabbed it and gave it a yank. For a moment, I was worried that only the rope would follow. Luckily, the crude mechanical device I had left in the boiler room was successfully fished out of the crime scene. I grabbed it with my hand and briefly admired my handiwork. A lot of people in my position would have connections that could craft things like this for them. I wasn't so lucky. Instead, I had to build it myself, without much knowledge of how to make something like this. But I had time. I had patience. I had resources. I could do this much by myself. All it did was fry a simple circuit board. Not much to it. Anyways, now that I had retrieved my tool, I didn't want to leave the window open. That was a sure sign of my guilt. The windows was a little too high for me to reach without assistance. Luckily, as I said, I had done my homework. I grabbed a second rope, this one attached to the back of the window, and yanked it down. Sure enough, the window fell to a close. Pulled the rope harder. With some resistance, it detached from the window. There. With a little ingenuity, I had erased my presence from the scene. Not hard at all. How could I get started with that whole escape idea? The fastest way to flee would be with a car down the road. I could be miles away in a matter of minutes. Luckily, I wasn't an amateur. That sort of escape was the type police studied. The type that would leave a trace. That would eventually get me caught. I remembered my mission statement. When I did my job right, it was like I was never there. I was just a non-entity. A hypothetical third-party killer with no evidence to prove or disprove me. I had turned my lack of a presence into my weapon. So then, an escape via car was out. What about by bike? Scooter? I just sprinted down the road. That wouldn't work either. Again, it wasn't the car that was the problem, it was the roads. I should take advantage of my strength. Usually when people think about a killer, they think they've got some life they need to return to. Since I didn't have that, I should have used that. My only goal was to escape detection. Speed wasn't an issue. So then not the roads. Forest. I made my way into the forest, in the direction of the seaside. I knew where I was going. So I began my trek in the dark. Silence. I still felt the need to put as much distance between myself and the crime scene. But again, professionals ignored their instincts. I needed to be better. Really, once you've got a few feet into the forest, most people wouldn't be able to spot you unless they went into the forest themselves. That would only happen if they were looking for someone who had left the venue. If things had gone well, that wouldn't be the case. Remember, speed isn't important. Avoiding detection is important. Need to make sure I wasn't leaving a trace. Light feet, careful feet. No footsteps, no trail of broken twigs. It's impossible to not alter a thing. It's also impossible to tell light traces of a human apart from the general chaos of a forest floor. I just need to make sure I wasn't overt. Slowly, methodically, blindly. Move forwards. The destination wasn't close, but that was fine. Speed isn't the issue. Forwards. Forwards. Mine drifted off to the sea and I left. At this point, the police were almost certainly there, discovering my work. Good. Discover my work. Be misled. Be preoccupied. Search for the killer in the Gala, not the forest. Forwards. Step by step. Calmly. Was I going in the right direction? There's only one direction to go. It's not like I could get lost. But did I go the right direction to begin with? Of course I did. I'd practiced this. These nerves were natural. Expected. After all, it had been hours? Hard to tell, but it would be hours before I reached my destination. With that sort of time commitment, it's expected that I doubt myself. But doubting isn't important. What's important is moving forwards. Step by step, and not a trace. At this point, the caution was probably unnecessary. If I'd done my job up until now, it's not like they could find my trail in the middle of the forest. It was the principle of the thing. Why risk it? Even if doing a job worse had a 0% chance of having repercussions, you'd still be doing it worse. If you don't do a worse job, if you want to be a winner. After what felt like ages, the tree line finally began to give way. Good. Don't rush to the edge, caught up in the moment. Step by step. As I looked out, I could see the sea. The moon looked beautiful, reflected upon the rocky waves. Obviously, I'd find the sea if I poked out on this side of the forest. Then I reached the place where I was meant to be. I scanned the seaside. There. Found it. A sad little dock without much advertising. Without a clear way to get to it. Without any big or extravagant boats attached. I wasn't looking for an extravagant boat. I was looking for the small, pitiful boat moored to the pier. And I found it. Before exiting the forest, I quickly scanned the area once more. This time I was on the lookout for witnesses. There was no good reason for someone to be here at this time of night. But I was here, wasn't I? The world was small. There was a lot of people living in it. Fortunately, fate was still on my side. Great. Carefully made my way down to the dock. There, the boat. Didn't even know who owned this thing. Doubt they'd used it in months. Not that it mattered. And taking off all the clothes that placed me as the member of the Gala, I stuffed it into a little bag I'd left on the boat, tied the bag, then tossed it into the ocean. I debated whether it was better to hide these clothes in the ocean or in the middle of the forest. Ultimately, I decided that both options resulted in near impossible chance of the evidence ever being found. Now I looked just like any other homeless person. So it made sense that I'd lie down in this random boat. It made sense I'd kick my legs out. This is where I was going to spend the night. Next day I'd make plans for getting back to my residence. Is this a touch excessive? Maybe. But boy, were investigators vicious. I spent days upon days trying to snag the smallest thread you leave dangling for them. One of their first methods they jumped to was tracking people's locations. Not a chance in hell they could do that with me. Made myself comfortable in the boat. First time tonight I could finally take a nice, long breath out. The first time tonight I could finally lie back without the expectation to jump back to attention at a moment's notice. First time tonight I could stop playing out scenario after scenario in my head. The first time tonight I could relax. Of course, that didn't mean I was going to relax. I probably hadn't relaxed truly in... My face soured. Couldn't exactly place a point in time where I'd call myself truly relaxed. That might just be a matter of semantics. Trying to define what was truly relaxing was like trying to define what was true happiness. A question for better philosophers than me. I suspected this was another one of those trouble thoughts. The ones that would just send me into another spiral. The point was, lying in the darkness, the silence, I could feel content. Yes, that was the word. Content. As far as I was concerned, that was the most admirable thing to strive for. If everybody could just find their lot in life and be content, this world would be a fine place. Because people couldn't. That's why I was in a job in the first place, now wasn't it? Yes, this was nice. I had done my job and I had done it well. I think this whole plan was a lot more elaborate than I was used to. There were a lot of ways things could have gone wrong. Why go through all this trouble, I wondered. Maybe I was just tired of the same standard methods. Everybody wants to try challenging themselves. Try to spread their wings, show their full potential. That wasn't it, not really. Honestly speaking, this was the most straightforward way of achieving the optional objective that I could think of. For a question without a simple answer, this was as straightforward as I could get. Now when the police arrived, they'd undoubtedly come to the wrong conclusion. That the killer was somebody on the inside of the party. They might even be bold enough to make an accusation. That'd be the ideal case. However it plays out, eventually they'll figure out how misguided they are. When the frame attempt on the Gala gets revealed, the media will have a field day with it. The next step will be super easy to complete. Apparently. Never really got the grander aspects of this job. just killed who needed to be killed. More importantly, there was nothing that could lead back to me at the scene. They wouldn't catch me for this murder. Well, if they did, it wouldn't be for any mistakes I made this time. This would be the time that some would become panic-stricken. They'd start worriedly thinking over every step or movement they took, wondering if there were any loose ends. But I knew better. I knew that I didn't leave any loose ends. By all means, it was a perfect job, done perfectly. How many times have we said this now? That was why I could lay back and be content. That's why I could enjoy the silence and the darkness. Who cared if the floor I lay on was hard and dirty? Who cared if it rocked unevenly? I knew better than anybody how phony luxury was. And I could be content lying on an expensive bed or on the ground dirt. It's simply a matter of attitude. The bugs were loud. Perfect job done perfectly. Is that what I did? By my standards, I certainly had. By every metric I judged my jobs by, I had. What was wrong? What went bad? Someone died. Isn't that sort of bad? I scowled at myself. Seriously? I'm an assassin. If somebody dies, that means my job went well. Well, that's a pretty sad job to have then. Who would be weeping over Athen? He was, by every metric, the perfect target. Not a single friend. No family either. No one would miss him. That can't be true. There's nobody in the world that wouldn't be missed if gone. Huh. Now there's a joke. Maybe I am funny after all. Athen would miss himself. You can't miss yourself if you're dead. I ended a man's happiness. How could that not be bad? Athen deserved it. He wasn't a good man. He was a bad man. A traitor, a snake, a rat. Was that any better than my boss? What really made him playing the game any worse than anybody else? In fact, some people might call what he intended to do noble, if a skewed sort. But aside that, then. I did my research. I knew Athen's history. He had been a sinner for a long time. So then he had forfeited his life? Because he made mistakes, he wasn't entitled to live? That didn't seem right. If that was the metric to go by, I wouldn't be entitled to live. Nobody's entitled to live. Millions of people die in cruel and irrational ways every day. The only thing that stops us from keeling over at any moment is luck. What's one more death? That's faulty reasoning. Just because bad things happen in other places, that doesn't make the bad things I did any less bad. Everybody deserves to die. Humans are evil at their core. God kills countless people with no regard to morality or utility. How then am I any different? This is really starting to... Many people curse God at the bottom of their heart. Did I really think of myself as a god? I didn't. I didn't think of myself a saint either. I didn't care about the morality of it at all. Why was I having this conversation at all? To pad out the runtime of this segment? I'm not having a conversation. I'm tormenting myself. It wasn't healthy. Even though I tried not to, I ended up spiraling again. I get what you're going for here. At least I caught myself this time before I got too deep. Nothing good could come of questioning things like that. I'd just be making myself sad. Nothing else would change. It's not like this job was making my life empty. My life was empty before I started this job. Like I usually did when I got ungrateful. I thought about my lowest point. when I just lost the little purpose I had in my life. When I was truly in an abyss. Went from day to day to day to day to day to day to day without the slightest bit of life in my eyes. Days where I wouldn't think a single productive thought. Days that would pass where I didn't say a single word. Days where I didn't do a single thing in my free time. Just stewed in guilt and anger and sorrow. Pathetic. Powerless. For talking about people who didn't deserve to live, well, never was there a more prime example than myself at the time. There was nothing for me, other than to question how I had gotten to this point. As empty of life as I was living, I was still living life. I started to go from day to day to day to day to day to day. Not repeating that all. Still recovering my voice, I'm not repeating all that for no reason. Often I would try to drown it all in alcohol, and while drinking alone was enticing, it required the forethought to buy beer ahead of time. That was the type of forethought I didn't tend to have back then. So many nights I'd go out to a bar. Panthea had plenty of them. Not that I really ever made a choice between them. Whatever was closest. In some ways I preferred bars to drinking alone. On some level I appreciated seeing other broken people like me. Be a bit less lonely, I guess. There was one problem with that. You really don't want to interact with people as broken as yourself. God. Dipshit. I didn't want anything to do with him. I literally said nothing. Can't remember what got him started. Memories are too blurry. Knew it wasn't worth anything. That guy must have been looking for a fight. Most people would have pushed back at some point. There weren't many people who would just sit there in silence, taking his drunken abuse. I was different than most drunks. I knew patience. Knew how to tolerate abuse. Behaved in a way that nobody could fault that night when I was in the bar. I was out of the bar. And who can fault me? How much of an asshole do you have to be to literally follow someone out of a bar just to be a dick to him? I had absolutely nothing going on in my life. Even I thought that pretty pathetic. It was the middle of the night. There's literally nobody else around. The sad thing, I literally can't remember his face. I couldn't tell you his hair color, his eye color, anything about him. He's a blur. But just one thing I remember. His voice. Pathetic. I'm sure there was some context to that word. Some insult attached to the front or back of it. That's the only word I remember. The thing that set me off. I'd forgotten just how strong I was. I was too drunk to control myself. It was a sad story. But an incredibly common one. The amount of times this exact thing happened was honestly kind of shocking. I was just the next scumbag drunk who went too far. I forgot how fragile people were around concrete. By all means, that should have been the end of things. I took another sigh out. That was just me genuinely sighing, but then stretched out my arms. But I was lucky. That wasn't the end for me. That was the start. It wasn't for that. I would have had a worthless life. Would have lived life powerless. Sad, pathetic, eventually dead. And look at me now. I was happy. No, not happy. Never happy. But content. Where I was now was content. Yes. Why was I questioning things like that? This was surely better than before. This was a worthwhile life. There was so much reminiscing, it was clear I wouldn't be getting sleep anytime soon. So instead, I sat up in the boat and pulled out my burner phone. It seemed like now was as good a time as ever to think about my next target. I still had an optional target on the docket. Optional targets are basically low-priority ones. They didn't need to die. At least not any time soon. They were still better off dead. They were contracts I'd get paid for if I chose to take them in my spare time. I didn't really care about the pay, though. just like to be thorough. Someone was better off dead. Better to end them sooner than later. It was that sort of service that made me so valuable. Look over the files started on the optional target. It's pretty threadbare. Still, I didn't think I have a problem with this one. She was pretty easy to find. I studied the blurry photo provided. The one had long, dark brown hair and distinctive silver eyes. God, this picture was from a pretty bad angle. How is this the best shot we had of her? Whatever. It was enough. Make a meeting with her soon enough. Make sure to make her another verse. Laverna. Well, well. I'll be meeting with you soon enough. Got a bronze key. Hey, you. Yes, you. Ever hear of a little something called utilitarianism? Me? Oh shit. I suppose, in that sense, Devin is a utilitarian. Yeah. I thought you might have. Utilitarianism, concerned with the consequences of your actions. That determines right or wrong, determines your worth. Determines, as Devin has said, you deserve to die. Devin killed a man. Some point earlier in their lives, at their lowest point. That's why they believe they deserve to die at some point, too. I thought you might have. Oh, do you believe in it? That's like a guiding philosophy. That's a difficult one. It's not. A concrete yes or no. Because the consequences don't. Utilitarians take into account the consequences only. Motives don't factor in at all. Leaning towards no. Really? Huh, okay. Maybe you're a step ahead of me. You see, I used to think utilitarianism was like the ideal philosophy. Not for me, of course, but in the eyes of the public. Why wouldn't that just be the thing? Like, boom, philosophy solved. Philosophy hacks. And yet philosophy is notably not solved. What's up with that? People just dumb? And that's prolonged an easy debate this long? I wouldn't put it past humanity. Fair. But now I've had some more time to reflect on it, I think I've come to a different conclusion. Utilitarianism is the perfect theoretical philosophy, at least for the purposes of the public. That's the thing. It's the perfect theoretical philosophy. Only people who care about theoretical philosophies are philosophers. Of course. We're looking for practical philosophies, ones you can put into action. Utilitarianism suddenly gets riddled with holes. See, how can you tell what's going to bring about the most good? No human can. Not really. A genius would struggle with that. Not to mention the amount of idiots there are going around. Yeah. So here's the kicker. Does the belief in utilitarianism, ironically enough, produce more bad in the world? As the act of punishing people for a perceived utility in itself more bad in the world. Yeah? This is a guiding philosophy. It's a lot easier to do bad with utilitarianism. It's kind of a maximum cap on the harm a stripped Kantian can do. Situations where not murdering someone's going to result in major harm do happen. They're kind of few and far between. But a utilitarian will watch the world burn with a smile on their face if they think it's for the best. Now, I'm still not coming down hard against utilitarianism. It has its pros, very obvious pros. If we're talking in the practical sense, it certainly isn't the runaway choice. It's a little something that's been on my mind. Interesting. We now have 2 bronze keys. And we now have a bit of understanding about why we put so much time into Devon's mindset here. It seems like we're going to have a very introspective look. More philosophical take on a character here. Very interesting. We do have a bronze lock, so we can open up Laverna's next chapter. Which I feel like we should. Since 1, we don't have another bed currently. And 2, we have Laverna and Devon's stories, which are obviously going to parallel. Devon targeting Laverna next. Laverna, the unexpected variable coming into Devon's crime scene. And sifting through the illusion fairly quickly. They are very much going to be coming head to head here. Which means we got more mini. At 3, I need to earn some more chips. So, hopefully there's more deduction to happen in Laverna's next section. That's where we will be going next. And 4, I need to rest my voice for a bit. Still recovering. So until next time, until then, thanks for watching.